This is today's Bible reading. The Slandered Bride from Nippur. Deuteronomy 22:13 through 19. Israelite society had laws governing how a husband could treat a new wife. The law of Deuteronomy 22:13 through 19 prohibits a man from obtaining a divorce merely by questioning her virginity and slandering her name. A woman so accused was permitted to produce evidence of her fidelity. Should she be vindicated, the husband was fined 100 shekels of silver and forbidden to divorce her for the rest of his life. Rejecting a new wife was not unique to Israel. A Sumerian marriage contract from Nippur describes a certain Enlil Isu, a priest of Enlil, the chief deity of the Sumerian pantheon. Enlil Isu took the woman Amasukal as his wife, and the new wife brought 19 shekels of silver to her spouse. The contract stipulates that if Enlil Isu rejects his bride, the 19 shekels must be returned, as well as her half mina of silver, approximately 30 shekels. If the wife rejects her husband, the payment is exactly the same. No reasons are given for the potential separation. All did not go well. Later on, the couple had their day in court, apparently before the consummation of the marriage. Amasukal was not convicted of speaking against her husband, but Enlil Isu was convicted of slandering and abusing his wife. To which he responded, "You may convict me even more than now. Still, I will not marry her. Let them imprison me, and then I'll pay the money instead." There are differences between the Israelite and Sumerian laws. The virginity of the Sumerian bride is not an issue in the Nippur contract, while virginity was the primary issue in the Israelite law. Nevertheless, we see that in both cultures, a new bride was protected to some degree from being rejected unjustly, slandered, and consequently divorced. Taking off the sandals, Deuteronomy 25:5 through 10. The countries of the Bible are warm and dry much of the year. Although shoes covering the entire foot are sometimes depicted in ancient pictures, sandals were the natural and more common foot covering for that climate. The simple act of removing a sandal carried symbolic meaning for ancient people. Sandals were such personal items that they symbolically represented their owner in some legal transactions. In one type of business transaction, removal of the sandal confirmed an exchange of buying and selling. Such an exchange could even include the acquisition of a wife. Yet a different legal transaction involved the breakdown of family and social obligations. A woman had a right to bear children to her deceased husband. If her brother-in-law refused her that right, she could publicly humiliate him, indicating such by removing his sandal. Sandals were also removed to symbolize the presence of holy ground. Because shoes tread through dust and dirt, they are symbolically dirty to Muslims. Thus, they are taken off before entering holy places like mosques. This Muslim custom reflects the attitude that shoes, dirty as they are, should not desecrate holy places. The same attitude appears in the Old Testament. Both Moses before the burning bush and Joshua before the commander of the Lord's army were instructed to remove their sandals, for they stood on holy ground. Middle Assyrian laws, Deuteronomy 25:11-12. A number of the laws in the Pentateuch have literary parallels in the law codes of Mesopotamia. These codes include the laws of Ishununna and the Code of Hammurabi. The Middle Assyrian laws, however, are closer in time and subject matter to the biblical laws than are the compilations of Eshnunna and Hammurabi. The law of Deuteronomy 25, 11, 12 addresses the case of a woman who intervenes in a fight between her husband and another man. The punishment, cutting off her hand, seems by modern standards to be both harsh and crude. This biblical law, however, was not out of place in the culture of that ancient time. One Middle Assyrian law offers a fairly close parallel to the Deuteronomy law. If a woman injures the testicles of a man in a fight, one of her fingers shall be cut off. The law establishes a more severe penalty if the man's second testicle becomes affected from the first, or if the woman injures the second testicle too. The Assyrian document is partly broken and unreadable, but possibly indicates that the woman who damages both a man's testicles would have her eyes put out. Such punishments are inappropriate in our legal systems today. Nevertheless, we can observe similarities between Israel's laws recorded in the Bible and the laws of other ancient cultures, such as the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Hittites. These parallels illustrate a shared legal tradition that existed throughout the ancient Near East. Apparently, certain social norms were accepted by both Israel and the neighboring peoples. The curses of disobedience, Deuteronomy 28:30 through 34. The various commandments and statutes established in the law of Moses were to be obeyed. The solemn message of Deuteronomy 28:15 through 68 is that disobedience would not be tolerated in Israel. They could enjoy blessings from God, or they could experience curses. Their carcasses eaten by birds, their bodies plagued by incurable diseases, their wives raped. The list of miseries goes on throughout Deuteronomy 28. Curses were a part of covenants in the ancient world and were intended to enforce the stipulations of the covenant. What jars our modern concepts of God is Israel's belief that it was their deity who would cause these curses if they violated the covenant. Several times in Deuteronomy are the words, "The Lord will." Israel was not unique in these beliefs concerning covenant curses. The grave consequences for disobedience are formally similar to the consequences other peoples faced for breaking treaties with their monarchs. Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, required subject states to accept a treaty of fidelity to both Esarhaddon and his successors. The vassal treaties of Esarhaddon contain in explicit detail the consequences for breaking the oath and reflect traditional curses found in Mesopotamian texts for at least 1,000 years before Esarhaddon. A selection of gods in the Assyrian pantheon were called upon to enact various curses, very similar to Deuteronomy 28, upon a disobedient vassal and his heirs. For example, Nergal would extinguish the life of the vassal, along with bringing carnage and pestilence. Ishtar would break the bow of the vassal in battle. Ninurta would kill the vassal with his bow and feed his carcass to the birds. The god Sin would clothe the vassal with leprosy, and Shamash would cause the individual to walk about in darkness. Last, all of the gods listed on the tablet would work to turn the vassal's soil into iron and turn the rain in the sky over his land into copper. Transition: Moses' final words. Moses' final speech contains various materials. In a final charge, Moses reviews Israel's recent God-given victories over idolatrous nations and predicts their future apostasy, but also God's restoration and cleansing. In light of all of this, Moses calls on them to choose life. The song of Moses and the blessing of Moses complete this leader's word to his people. Now, book of Deuteronomy, chapter 29, the covenant renewed in Moab. These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, besides the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. Now Moses called all Israel and said to them, "You've seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, the great trials which your eyes have seen, the signs and those great wonders. Yet the Lord has not given you a heart to perceive and eyes to see and ears to hear to this very day. And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes have not worn out on you, and your sandals have not worn out on your feet. You've not eaten bread, nor have you drunk wine or similar drink, that you may know that I am the Lord your God. And when you came to this place, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, came out against us to battle, and we conquered them. We took their land and gave it as an inheritance to the Reubenites, to the Gadites, and to half the tribe of Manasseh. Therefore keep the words of this covenant and do them, that you may prosper in all that you do. All of you stand today before the Lord your God, your leaders and your tribes and your elders and your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones and your wives, also the stranger who is in your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, that you may enter into covenant with the Lord your God and into his oath, which the Lord your God makes with you today, that he may establish you today as a people for himself, and that he may be God to you, just as he has spoken to you, and just as he has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I make this covenant and this oath not with you alone, but with him who stands here with us today before the Lord our God, as well as with him who is not here with us today. For you know that we dwelt in the land of Egypt, and that we came through the nations which you passed by, and you saw their abominations and their idols which were among them, wood and stone and silver and gold. So that there may not be among you man or woman or family or tribe whose heart turns away today from the Lord our God to go and serve the gods of these nations, and that there may not be among you a root bearing bitterness or wormwood, and so it may not happen, when he hears the words of this curse, that he blesses himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, even though I follow the dictates of my heart, as though the drunkard could be included with the sover. The Lord would not spare him, for then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy would burn against that man. And every curse that is written in this book would settle on him, and the Lord would blot out his name from under heaven, and the Lord would separate him from all the tribes of Israel for adversity, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the law, so that the coming generation of your children who rise up after you, and the foreigner who comes from a far land, would say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sicknesses which the Lord has laid on it, the whole land is brimstone, salt, and burning. It is not sown, nor does it bear, nor does any grass grow there, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and his wrath. All nations would say, "Why has the Lord done so to this land? What does the heat of this great anger mean?" Then people would say, "Because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. For they went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods that they did not know and that he had not given to them. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against this land to bring on it every curse that is written in this book. And the Lord uprooted them from their land in anger, in wrath, and in great indignation, and cast them into another land, as it is to this day. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law." Amen. This is the end of the Bible reading today. Thanks for joining. Have a great day. God bless you and see you tomorrow again.